Fellow Falcoholics, what is up? Welcome to another episode of the Falcoholic Live. I am here, I promise, joined by Adnan Ikic. He is my co-host once again at Say Which Way, covering day 3 and 4 of training camp. Adnan, welcome back. How are you doing today, my friend?
I'm doing well, I'm a lot more limited apparently in my Twitter use because we're under a communistic rule, but
I'm
I'm
sorry, I
here.
thought this was America. I'm sorry.
Uh,
Yes, but thank
but
you.
yeah,
Thank you
yeah,
still for the coverage. I appreciate it. Yeah.
yeah. It was a very light day today, so most of what we talk about is probably going to be from last night at the practice over in Seckinger High School. But yeah, it was very. I and the other members of the media definitely also got rained on, like heavily, like it just came out of nowhere. But I guess that's the risk in Georgia these days. It's been raining every single day.
Yeah. I think we got really lucky last year that we didn't get rained on, and it seems like this year it's made up for it, like almost in one rainstorm, dumped the entire week's worth of rain from last year right on top of you guys. But yeah, rain or shine, we got plenty to talk about today, folks. So thanks for tuning in. We are going to be getting to, like Adnan said, mostly day three's practice at Seckinger High School. The public practice, that was the exciting one. Day four, mostly walkthroughs, as he said, but we're still going to get into all that good stuff here on the show. So thanks, you guys, for tuning in. Please like, subscribe, all that good stuff. We're going to get into all that stuff. If you got questions, throw them in the chat. You can leave a donation. We'll obviously answer all those donation questions as well. Happy to see everyone. Welcome in Kevin Dog, Moonstar. What's up, guys? RDs, what's up, folks? We will be getting into the nitty gritty of Saturday's practice for the most part, because that was the one that had all the action. We're gonna break it down for you. Very exciting practices from what I've read. I can't wait to hear the first-hand account from Adnan himself. Before we dive in, real quick, folks, want to bring you a word from our sponsor, BetOnline. Folks, BetOnline is the world's most trusted betting platform and your number one source for everything online sports betting. And right now, you can receive a free 50% free bet up to $250 on your first deposit to bet on anything from the Olympics to baseball to Formula One racing. They have MMA. They've got all that good stuff. You can check it out on BetOnline. They've also got every stat, every matchup, and even live odds and spreads while the games are being played. And when the game's over, you can head on over to their online casino, get in on a game of blackjack, get in on a game of poker, or unwind with one of their over 150 slots games. So what are you waiting for, folks? Head on to that website today, BetOnline, to get in on the action. Just remember to use our promo code BELIEVE. That's BLEAV for your 50% free bet credit on your first deposit up to $250. BetOnline, the game starts here. All right. Well, definitely feel like we're going to focus most of our time on that Seckinger high school practice. But how was that? Because I don't know if they've had one at that specific high school before. But
No, not at that one. The
mm,
last one they had was in at Buford High School, and
yeah,
I think
yeah.
this was definitely pre-COVID. The last Friday Night Lights. I think I want to say 2019, but it may have been 2018. Whatever that summer was where everyone was playing Pokemon Go. I think that's the last. That was the last Friday Night Lights.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, it was nice. It was it's a beautiful campus. It's a beautiful field. You can tell that there's a lot of there's a lot of big time donators over at Secondary High School. It's one of those like really high end Gwinnett County fields, and Gwinnett is really serious about its high school football, so that's not much of a surprise. It was absolutely packed. The second I walked up, I came about an hour before practice started, and you could already see the stands getting filled up, and then they were absolutely like completely packed. By the time practice started, I noticed that parking was already full an hour before, so you can tell that it was a very raucous atmosphere. The fans couldn't wait to get out there and see the team, and it's one of two open practices to the team to the fans, excuse me. It's that one and the one at Mercedes-Benz Stadium here coming up on Friday night. But yeah, it was a very lively atmosphere, and the team gave us a lot of live action, similar to what we saw on Thursday as well.
Yeah. It sounded very exciting. It looked like the weather for that practice was actually pretty
Oh, it
nice.
was beautiful. Oh, it was
So that's
beautiful out.
great. Yeah, that's always nice to see. And it sounds like there was plenty of action, which I was expecting, right? When they have the high school, the Friday Night Lights practices, or the Ben's practices, they're trying to show off, right? They're trying to get everything out there for the fans, for especially for this year, where there's like we said, there's only 2 open practices, period. So what were some of the biggest takeaways? I've read your notes, so I'm not going to steal the thunder, but like let the people know like what your biggest takeaway was. I think I know where you're going to start, but
I
again,
mean,
let you
I'm
lead the
I'm,
way.
I'm
Yeah,
gonna start with Kirk Cousins,
yeah,
obviously. Like Kirk Cousins on Thursday night, I think I said that I don't know if even the great Matt Ryan ever had a training camp that was or a training camp practice that was as good as the one we saw from Kirk on Thursday. And then on Friday, he like absolutely matched it. Like, and by absolutely matched it, I mean by my count, he went 14 to 15 on his passes on Friday, the same way that he did on Thursday. And I mean, it's just he completely overwhelmed the defense. They started out once again 11 on 11s. It was first team against the second team defense. Cousins went 7 for 8 against the second teamers. 3 of those completions were to Kyle Pitts. The only incompletion was a pass that was defended well by Micah Abernathy, one-on-one against Pitts near the sideline. Um, but Cousins was just he was taking what the defense gave him underneath, and on those short patterns, he was forcing the issue deep when he had the opportunity. He was giving his wide receivers a genuine and legitimate chance. He was trusting them. He was throwing dots deep, and it's clear that he looks 3 to 4 steps ahead of the defense at all times. Then they ran some 11 on 11s where Cousins in the first team offense went against the first team defense. By my count, the offense went 4 for 4 in this session. 3 of those passes were to Drake London. I think all 3 would have gone for at least first downs. There was some disconnect because the last pass by Cousins in that session looked like it was intercepted by Troy Anderson, but I didn't count that because the play was blown dead already. Because Zach Harrison came up and I think he got credit for the sack, so they blew the play dead, and then Cousins kind of threw up an uncompetitive pass, which Anderson picked. But yeah, I'm not going to criticize Cousins for that one or sort of mark him off there. And then finally, they went into a red zone, a red zone look, starting from the 25, then going to the 15, then the 10, then the 5. One of those type of deals. 3 for 3 for Cousins in that one. One of the passes was a screen pass to Bijan. One was a 10-yard pass on what looked like a slant to Kyle Pitts from the 15 to the 5. And then when he was at the 5 later on, Cousins progressed through his reads, had a lot of time, found Ray McLeod wide open in the back of the end zone. Overall, 14 of 15 by my count. And I mean, he was just dominant. And Cousins is the best player on the field whenever he's on the field. Achilles injury or no, playing in the preseason or no, like it is clear that he is levels above everyone else right now.
yeah, and that's great to see when you're paying him the most of anyone on the team. I know, you know, there was a lot of concern about would he be healthy enough to play in training camp, preseason, week 1, whatever. And it's nice to see that not only has been able to take in practice basically the entire offseason without issue. He doesn't look like he's lost anything at this point. Obviously, it's no contact. That's a different game. We'll see how things progress with pads and so on. They're not going to be hitting him in practice, but it's nice to see that to see the cerebral sort of quarterback back in Atlanta. I think fans got so spoiled, myself included, by Matt Ryan being here and having that sort of cerebral quarterback that was able to just survey and make quick decisions and make the right decisions. And we haven't had that the last 2 years. I mean, obviously. So just seeing Cousins sort of dice up the defense, which is very much in the middle of their own scheme transition, it's good to see that, if stuff is open, that he's able to hit it, because I think last year in training camp, we saw guys open and that just the quarterback didn't seem to be able to hit them when they were open, or they couldn't throw them open, or they were reluctant to let it rip. I know that was one of your big criticisms. It's like, are we going to see them throw deep ever? I think we've already seen some deep
Yeah,
bombs even over the first couple days of training camp here. So
it's a night and day difference. And the other cool thing about Cousins is you can tell that he is going through his reads because he is spreading that ball around. Like I counted the receivers who were making catches yesterday. Pitts led the team with 4 catches total. Drake London had 3, all within that session against the first teamers. Ray McLeod had 3. One was a touchdown, one was a screen pass, and the other was a beautiful deep crossing route where he caught it for 25 plus yards. Uh, Darnell Mooney had a couple of catches, and then the other throws went to the running backs. But basically, like every time, he's not locking on and concentrating on one player. He's going to the player that has, sort of the best chance of making the catch schematically, which is, it's a really cool thing to sort of see in real time and in live action from, from a veteran quarterback just performing the way you would expect, a veteran 4-time Pro Bowler to perform.
yeah, yeah. No, I mean, I'm excited to see that, and it's nice to see competent quarterbacking. Like I'm not gonna like mince words. It's nice to see that. It's nice to see that early in camp. It's better than just being like, well, I guess we'll see, how they progress. And we all got tired of that last training camp. I'm not the only one that feels that way. You were tired of it like after the first day. So, it's nice to not have to continue making excuses for the quarterback room, and that extends to Michael Penix as well. I know he wasn't quite as dominant on Saturday night, but still pretty good. So how did the rookie look out there? Because he had to play against the starters a fair amount too, I believe. So
Yeah. So hold on, I need to charge my laptop. Sorry about that.
oh, danger zone, danger zone.
Danger zone. Yeah,
Yeah,
we're
it's
down
okay.
to
I'll talk for a second.
Yeah, we're done. No, no, no. We got it. We got it. See, veteran move. I had it in the outlet already, so all I needed to do was like grab it and like just plug it in.
Oh, nice,
Um,
nice. Yep.
yeah, it was. I wrote my notes. It was a mixed bag for Penix. So he looked really dominating on Thursday to the point of like, all right, there's some concern about the defense a little bit, especially because Penix is out there. Remember, he's not throwing to Drake London or Kyle Pitts. He's throwing to the wide receivers who are fighting for roster spots. His favorite target is Rondale Moore. Not that Moore is fighting for a roster spot, but Rondale Moore is not a starter on this team right now. And the other guy who he seems to be developing some chemistry with is rookie Casey Washington, who had a really nice catch about 25 yards down the field toward the sideline. And it was an absolute picturesque throw by Penix on it. But yeah, it started out. I could tell that the first team defense did have a little bit of a chip on its shoulder to start things out because Penix's first 2 throws, both off the mark. Then he completed his next 3 passes, including a couple that went for at least 15 plus yards down the field, including that one sideline strike to Casey Washington that I mentioned. Mike Hughes broke up a pass to Chris Blair on the next pass, which means that overall, by my count, Penix went 3 for 6 against the first team. Now, the negative came on a pass against the second team where Clark Phillips absolutely just read the route the entire way, absolutely completely baited Penix, who, in fairness, is still a rookie. And Clark Phillips intercepted the pass rather easily, and it would have been a pick six in a real game setting. He had blockers with him, he had open field. A really great play by Clark Phillips, really. And that's the second straight day where Phillips has, had something to talk about regarding a play. I mean, this is obviously the big one, the interception, but remember, he also had the red zone stop against Kirk Cousins on Thursday for Cousins' only incompletion on in Thursday's session. So Clark Phillips he's sort of making his mark a little bit so far. Um, the really Penix looked really good, like the best he looked in that red zone setting, which again started at the 25 and then it was like, by fives. Um, threw a touchdown pass to Rondale Moore from the 15-yard line. Rondale Moore burned AJ Terrell. Like he beat him by a step. That's not something that Falcons fans want to hear right now because your number one cornerback is getting burned by the team's right now number four wide receiver. But none of that would have mattered if the pass from Penix wasn't perfectly on the mark. By the time Moore got into the end zone, stretched both arms out, it was right there for him. Penix then had another should be touchdown throw to John Fitzpatrick, which Fitzpatrick dropped. That's his third drop in 2 days from Penix passes. So that should have also been it should have been two touchdowns for Penix in this one. But yeah, it was good and bad. Overall, I had Penix as going 6 for 11. Had some passes off the mark. Did pay with that stick route throw to Rondale Moore, which was picked off by Clark Phillips. But then he bounced back a little bit, and that's a good thing to see with Penix. That I'm really happy about that. A couple of times there was a bad play or a bad pass that happened, and then he sort of immediately bounced back, which is a really good sign for a young quarterback.
Mhm. Yeah, you love to hear it. I mean, again, you don't expect Penix to be perfect. You don't expect any rookie quarterback to be perfect, or you're going to be disappointed. But what you like to see is that even if there are some bad plays, that you need some flash plays to match it, and we definitely saw that. I think we saw the clip of the Penix to Rondale Moore touchdown, which I believe has been taken down because I couldn't find it again today when I went to go look for it.
Oh,
But
has it?
yeah, I'm pretty sure because I couldn't find it again. But yeah, that was a great pass, and like that was just one of those things where AJ Terrell probably should have respected Rondale Moore's speed a little bit more because Rondale Moore's like one of the fastest, most athletic receivers in the NFL. So maybe a little bit more cushion if you're one on one. He didn't have safety help, so um, it's maybe a little bit of AJ Terrell underestimating the second team offense. Maybe not used to having that type of quarterback who could put that ball on the money on second team. But yeah, so
Yeah, I mean, there's
it
gonna
was a
be
perfect throw. Yeah,
yeah, no, it was a perfect throw. This isn't this time or place for it. We'll have time to talk about this, but I do have some takes about AJ Terrell, just in the future regarding. I feel like there is a conversation to be had there. That's
yeah,
not, and that conversation is not, oh, just pay him like market resetting money and move on. Like I don't sort of agree with that being what the team should do, but that's something we'll probably get to at some point this season. Right now we're talking about camp, but yeah, Rondale Moore. It was a nice little bounce back for Rondale Moore as well because he gets that touchdown. He got another deeper catch toward the sideline. I like it for him because he did have that drop on Thursday. But yeah, Moore is clearly right now Penix's favorite target, which makes sense. He's the guy with the most veteran experience on that second team unit. Some other guys on that second team unit that I saw: Austin Mack, Dylan Drummond, Chris Blair. So these guys who are just sort of fighting for that roster spot. But yeah, it's Moore is definitely the number four because Ray McLeod continues being impressive. Like
yeah,
Ray McLeod, clearly the slot wide receiver right now. Again, did nothing to sort of relinquish that role. He's been Ray McLeod. If you aren't paying attention to Falcons training camp or anything going on, he's going to be that sleeper of the team this season where people who aren't paying attention are probably going to be like, oh shit, like Ray McLeod is you know getting some stats. Like who would have thought that he's more than than just a returning specialist. But yeah, it's been an impressive day so far from McLeod, and you can tell that Cousins definitely has some confidence in him already.
yeah. Yeah. No, that's always nice to see. I mean, you love that. We were looking for that slot guy to emerge. I think no, I think we all thought that the team was probably going to draft a slot specialist, but their ability to get someone, Ray McLeod for cheap. Not necessarily a bank breaking contract. Don't have to use the draft capital on that. I mean, that's great news. We're certainly happy to have Ray here. He's a veteran presence. He's experienced with Ike Hilliard, the wide receivers coach. So that one makes a ton of sense. I'm glad that seems to be working out. I know you also mentioned Casey Washington had a big catch from Penix during that team session. So I know fans are excited to hear more about Casey Washington and how he's doing.
Yeah, no, I would say he's probably Penix's second favorite target thus far, right after Rondale Moore. He had a couple of nice catches. Um, I would say that Washington definitely right now has that inside track to getting one of those roster spots. If he is one of those guys that ends up being on the outside looking in, I think he'll be the first guy the team tries to add to the practice squad. But right now, sitting here, and we haven't even gotten into pads yet. This is all just the first sort of session. Thus far, it's just been shorts. But so far, I would say that if I had to guess today, I would say Washington will be one of those six wide receivers on this roster. I think he's out there during special teams drills as well, not as a returner, but as one of
Yeah.
those sort of gunner type roles. But yeah, I mean that's sort of what he'll have to do to earn that place on the team. But yeah, so far so good with Casey Washington. I'm not sitting here saying, oh, he's going to be, he's going to be Cooper Cup the way that some people, or Puka Nakua the way that some people were talking about, after we got Zach Robinson. But yeah, I like what I've seen from Casey Washington so far.
Yeah, it's good to have another guy. I sort of think he might be someone they hope can sort of be Drake London's understudy backup type guy. If Drake has to come out for some snaps or whatever, that Casey Washington's got the size, got the physicality to sort of fill that role. So I'm excited to see how he continues to progress over the course of camp and preseason. And always good to have a guy that your young quarterback loves to throw to. Ray and Casey Washington. That's a good set of receivers for Penix, who think we might see a lot of them in the preseason, Adnan, on our not play by play watch party show.
God, I
Very
can't
much
believe
not
it's
play by
really
play.
a play-by-play. So dumb. Like, no, I'm sorry, but they're taking away everything, bro. Like, they're taking away
They're taking
everything, little
everything
by
from me.
But yeah, it was a good day for those day three rookies. JD Bertrand had so we finally saw Taylor Heineke also get some snaps in 11 on 11s. And I think that was just one of those where, hey Taylor, you're here by default, so here's the ball. And it was the very last session of 11s. Raheem Morris called it the young time, or the young session, whatever, where all the rookies and young players played. And then, Taylor Heineke is 31, but, just sort of by
31
default.
years young. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, hey, 31's not old. As someone that is now nearing his 30s, I am vehemently going to say that Taylor Heineke is also a very young man. But yeah, Bertrand had a nice pass breakdown or breakup on one of those Heineke passes, and it was one of those where he like knocked it up into the air, which is really dangerous for the offense. The ball ended up falling harmlessly on the ground. I think he got a little bit of pressure on a blitz on another play, and then Jace McClellan right now is clearly the number three running back. He got a hole and scampered for a big gain. I haven't talked much about the running backs so far, just because you can't gauge anything about running backs until pads come on.
Yeah.
Because every time someone gets near one of the running backs, the play is blown dead. But that now it just assumes that someone's always going to make an open field tackle on them, which isn't the case. So it's hard for running backs to sort of get going. McClellan today in walkthroughs was the guy lined up right next to Penix almost every single time. Algier and Bijan they work with Cousins, and then you have McClellan working mostly with Penix. So that tells me that right now Jace has that firm inside track to that RB3 role. And yeah, he also had that nice run. The run looked like it went for like 20, 30 yards, damn near.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was a good day for some of those day three rookies that we haven't really seen very much of on Thursday.
Yeah, yeah, no, I'm glad we got some more looks for those guys, and Taylor Heineke. I think it's sort of like I wouldn't read anything into him being like stuff with the young guys. I think the team knows what they have in Taylor Heineke. They don't feel like they need to get him reps. They don't feel like they're not like I know they were like, oh well, Penix and Heineke are gonna split reps, but like I don't really see the point of that, right? It's like Heineke's an NFL veteran, like 8-year veteran type guy. He doesn't really need the reps. Penix obviously needs every rep that he can get, and Cousins needs the reps because he's a starter. So, it's not surprising that he's in this spot. I know some people still think that he's going to be cut. I really don't think that he is going to be cut. Maybe traded, right? Like if somebody really needs an extra quarterback, that could be an option, but they're not going to cut him. I don't think there's not really any financial reason to do that. So
Yeah, I mean, Heineke has a great attitude about it. Like he was made available to the media after practice. He was asked about, Kirk Cousins being signed, Penix being drafted. He was very candid. He said, he knows the writing's on the wall. He said it's not anything he hasn't been through in his career thus far. He said he went through it in Minnesota, went through it at some other stops, and that, he'll just sort of do everything he can to help out Penix as much as possible, to learn from Kirk Cousins as much as possible. So, it's just I'm very impressed with Heineke's professionalism about all of this because he did come in. Remember last year he came in as someone who, sure, he was signed as a backup, but Taylor Heineke and his agent knew he was gonna have a legitimate shot at some point of probably, playing some starting football, and you saw it with the incentives in his contract. I think it's if he led the team to the playoffs, he would have made like, a few $1 million more in his contract. So that was all sort of strategically placed to where he was thinking he was probably gonna have a chance eventually at supplanting Desmond Ritter. Now he did. It didn't really work out, and now this year, it's a 180 where he's firmly the quarterback three. Like, not only did they sign Kirk Cousins to a massive contract, but they also drafted, you know, the guy who's going to be Cousins' backup in the top 10. And, Heineke, like, not all quarterbacks would have a great reaction to that. But, Heineke obviously wanted to stay here. He did take that pay cut. And now, I'm just real, like, I just have a ton of respect for Taylor Heineke just as a person for all of that, and also I just I just root for Heineke in general because he's from Gwinnett, go Chico. So yeah, it's really impressive just that sort of leadership and professionalism that we've seen from Heineke so far.
yeah, yeah, no, I mean it's great to have that, to have that type of guy in the building, a guy that you can trust to help mentor your young quarterback. And I think honestly, like for teams that have playoff aspirations, having veteran quarterbacks in the wings to play if injuries do strike, because they do strike sometimes, like that can keep your team afloat if it's a temporary injury. Obviously, if you have season-ending injuries to stars, that's probably going to hurt your chances of making the playoffs. But you know, you can survive small gaps of stars if you've got the type of players in the wings that can step in and play at a high level, even if it's for a few games. So, um, yeah, I'm glad we have him. I mean, I know he didn't necessarily meet expectations last year, but I think he's a good player to have on your roster, and I think this scheme he'd probably look a little bit better in if we're being totally honest. So, um, but yeah, I know there was a lot of talk about the defensive line showing out on Saturday night's practice. So I know fans want to hear about the defense doing good things because didn't get a lot of that the day before. So
Yeah, I mean, obviously big play, Clark Phillips, we talked about him a little bit. I'm happy with what I saw from the interior of the defensive line. Taquan Graham remains with the first team. Like, he is going to be Graham's going to be on this team, and he's going to get snaps. They rotated, continued to rotate a lot, and Grady Jarrett got some nice pressure in this game. David Onyemata has maybe been the best defensive lineman on the team so far in camp, which is no surprise. given how good Onyemata looked last year, and given the fact that Grady is returning from an injury, he was very limited in Thursday's session, probably to have more of an impact on Friday's session. But then you had Rook Ororo also get a sack. Um, Onyemata had a sack where he just sort of went untouched, and they immediately blew the play dead. He like automatically like stopped up, like he came up to Penix, then like stopped, and it's like, okay, this was a blown assignment. The other guy I want to talk about is Zach Harrison when it comes to the interior. We talked with we oh, hey Jordan.
It is Jordan. Hey, you bullied him into it, Adnan.
Yeah, I did bully him.
Y'all got about 25 minutes out of me, man. I'm
Okay.
over here trying to make sure my alma mater gets great at football again. But you know
Yep.
what? I'll talk some Falcons football.
Hey,
Yeah, it's training camp. You can't stay away. I mean, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. But yeah, like Zach Harrison, one thing that we had the assistant GM doing his media availability. He talked about Zach Harrison. He said that the coaching staff asked Zach Harrison to add some weight over the offseason, and he went from 265 to 289 over the course of the offseason with the specific intention of being lined up on the inside. And it's something I did notice. Not only is he defensive end in the 3-4, but he looks to be lining up in that 2 technique in the 4-3 as well, or he did on Thursday and then a little bit on Friday. So, he also got a sack. He got that sack on Cousins, which was the no interception thrown to Troy Anderson. But definitely there looks to be a concrete plan for Zach Harrison this year. And that plan is going to be, he's going to be, sort of rotated out through the inside, which is, I'm happy to see it. But overall, the interior is going to have to get a lot of pressure because I'm not seeing anything from the edge guys when it comes to pressuring the quarterback at all so far.
Yeah. It's obviously tough too without pads because it's like you have a limited arsenal to utilize when you have very limited contact. So maybe we'll see some better stuff there, but by the same token, the offensive line could get a little bit rougher too. So yeah, I mean, I'm glad the interior is at least shaping up. I know I'm a big fan of the interior defensive line. I know you are as well, Jordan. So they definitely got guys there this year, no doubt. So
yeah.
Yeah, you know what's fun about it? So obviously, as y'all know, I live in the Bay Area. One of the things that like people out here they don't like to hear is 2 timelines. The reason why is because with the Warriors, right? The 2 timelines were, hey, you got Steph, Clay, and Dre, maximize them as much as you can. Of course, they drafted James Wiseman, Jordan Poole, all the guys like that. It's like, well, we also want to be in a spot where we win later, right? Of course, didn't work out as they expected because Clay's now gone, he's in Dallas. James Wiseman has moved on, like all those things, right? It didn't work out as they planned. But with the Falcons interior defensive line, and I'm including Zach Harrison with this now too, right? Because of his weight gain. And it's like in a good weight gain, right? I'm not saying like it's a sloppy thing, like it's a good weight gain. They have a situation now on the interior of the defensive line where, yeah, you have the Grady Jarretts, you have David Onyemata. Also, side note, so happy to see that Grady Jarrett is like going. I know like they're gonna modify some things here or there for him, right, during training camp, but so good to see he's back, right? So good to see it. But you have him, you have those guys, but then at the same time, you have the Ruka Roros, you have Zach Harrisons, you have these young guys too, where it's just like the first time in a while you're really looking at the Falcons and you're like, at least on the interior D line, you're set up for 5-6 years potentially. Like that's what it feels like, and that's what it looks like. Now, of course, on the outside, we'll see what happens, right? Because there's some 3-4 looks. And I know, Kevin, when we talked about this, like I was like, hey, where's Caden Ellis going to line up? And we've seen him on the outside a good bit, right? So we'll see how that ends up looking like. But at least on the interior, they're looking pretty good.
Yeah, definitely happy to see that because again, you can get pressure on the interior if you get enough. Like what we saw early last year, I think was with Jared and Onyemata healthy, they were generating enough pressure from that interior that they didn't necessarily need the edge group to be outstanding. Like they could just have guys doing their jobs and it was okay. But as soon as they ended up, losing Jarrett, and then they lost Onyemata for a while, and then they lost depth guys too, then it all kind of fell apart in the pass rush department. But up until that point, it was looking pretty good. So maybe they're going back for that strategy this year, like just completely sell out, get the interior where it needs to be, because again, it's hard to do everything all at once. Like it's like, we got to fix the secondary, we got to fix the edge rush, we got to fix the interior. Let's just do one. We're doing the interior. Next year we'll get onto the edge rush or whatever it is. And but yeah, I love the interior pressure. I think it works against some of those quarterbacks that like to sit in the pocket. And we know Tom Brady famously said, like, yeah, I hate interior pressure. Like that's what bothers me the most. So they're playing some tough quarterbacks.
Yeah, I mean, it's the closest and like the fastest point and target to the quarterback, right? Like any quarterback will tell you that's where they hate it the most, is right up front, because that's the easiest way to get to you. That's right in your line of sight for the majority of the field. So yeah, like the fact that the Falcons have that ability to do that, it's great. Also, like you said, you talked about all the injuries we had. It's almost like the Falcons interior D line last year, precursor to the Braves for this year. Right, where it's just like anyone you can think of, they're going to get hurt.
Yeah.
Now, shout out to the Braves. I know they won today. It's good to at least get a split in New York, because I think we all can't stand the Mets. Like it's what it is. So, but like that's just like what it looked like. Even when you bring in guys, right, in the trade deadline or like right before the trade deadline, they get hurt. Like that's what happened on the interior. But at the same time, it's the guys that got hurt, the guys that were coming off of injuries the year before, well, now they're full strength too. So like there's just a good group of talent right now on that inside, and it's really it's gonna be. I really think it's gonna be fun to see this year.
Yeah, I'm excited to see it for sure. And yeah, I know some of the other things you were touching on. Adnan, in terms of the defensive line, James Smith-Williams seems to be starting alongside Lorenzo Carter. We've also seen like Arnold Ebiketie and Braylon Trice playing into that rotation as well. How's that edge group? How's it? I know you said the sacks haven't necessarily been there, but how's the edge group, looking in terms of the snap distribution and how these guys are playing out there?
It's a straight rotation. Like, I mean, it's like James Smith-Williams is the starter, like on paper. I think he's a starter because Raheem Morris said that they look at him more as that run stopper. So I think he's going to get those starts because, 1st and 10 is generally that down and distance where the other team runs the ball a bit more. But, they're rotating in Ebiketie, they're rotating in Trice. I think they're going to try and have Ebiketie try and be as much of a designated pass rusher as possible. Now, the 3-4 as the outside linebacker, obviously, sometimes you do have to drop into coverage a bit more than the defensive ends do on a 4-3 where they have their, hands on the ground. So I think they will. Just my guess is they're going to try to put Ebiketie in there more so on those third downs, on those, obvious, sort of passing downs and distances. But, it's nice to see Braylon Trice have that trust from the coaches early on to be in that rotation a little bit. Lorenzo Carter is a guy who's, he's going to play a lot. I saw D'Angelo Malone in there with the second teamers. Also Brandon Dorlus. I know some people were asking about where he was. I saw him today in the walkthroughs. He was on that Michael Penix field walkthrough, which is where the third and fourth team defense is, whereas the first and second teamers are with Kirk Cousins on the official Kirk Cousins walkthrough. But yeah, Brandon Dorlus is getting that play at left defensive end in the 3-4. D'Angelo Malone is on the edge. J.D. Bertrand is up the middle there. But yeah, it's going to be a heavy rotation, like to the point where I don't even care to talk about the starters on paper because it's just on paper. They're going to rotate so much along the defensive line and on the edge at this point. Like Caden Ellis too. Like Caden Ellis is getting some snaps on the outside as well in that 3-4.
Yeah, that's exciting stuff. Well, I definitely want to open the floor to you, Jordan, for your time here in case you have any questions or things like that, because Adnan's got the answers. So
No, I mean, well, like to your point, right? Like you said, Anand's got the answer. So first and foremost, before I ask any questions, I know I said it in the chat, but I want to reemphasize it again. Anand, damn good job, man. Like it's
Appreciate it.
awesome everything you're putting out there. Like I'm so like it's great work, right? Like I want to make sure you get recognized for that. I'm sure Kevin's already talked about it, but I just wanted to say it again. Like awesome job, dude.
Thank you so
Awesome
much.
job. Yeah, man. And so yeah, like I guess like one of the questions though, like with that being in mind, right? First one would be secondary, right? Like maybe y'all have already hit on this, talked about it before I got on, but just a question again of like, I think a lot of people, like not just me, but people might have questions about Clark Phillips. I know he got the pick right against Penix, with the twos, but just like overall, like what are you seeing with them? Because I know like there's been the talk of like, hey, there's Helms and Richie getting reps, like they're kind of switching reps right with each other. I haven't seen as much about that with Clark Phillips, right, with Mike Hughes. So like what's going on with him?
Yeah, Clark Phillips is running exclusively with the twos. Now he's running as the outside corner. He did have, that pass breakup in the red zone on Thursday against Cousins. He had the nice pick yesterday, but I don't see him running with the ones that like right now, cornerback two. You would think Mike Hughes looks as solidified at CB2 as AJ Terrell does at CB1 at this point. Like there is no rotation going on. Like it is exclusively his job right now. And similar with D. Alford, who is getting those nickel cornerback looks with the first team. But yeah, right. I thought that Clark Phillips getting that interception would sort of open the door a little bit, and it still might. Like, well, I'll be eager to see on Tuesday and Wednesday. But today, again, mostly Mike Hughes in the walkthrough at cornerback too. So that's sort of an uphill climb for Clark Phillips to sort of overtake Hughes at this point, and that's as surprising to me as it probably is to you guys because I thought that was going to be like a legitimate competition. So far, no. So far, the coaching staff, it looks like they have placed a lot of trust in Mike Hughes as a starter right now.
Yeah, I mean especially like I think we all remember Raheem, he talked earlier the offseason, just like the high praises of Clark, right? Like that was another one of those things like, all right, like looks like if you don't get that CB2, whether it's in the draft or free agency, like that's gonna be the guy. So that that's kind of been of a shocker. Um, at least not in terms of him taking all the reps, right? But at least not even taking some. I think that's been something. I guess another question. This is kind of my other main question is, and it's more like the reason why I asked this is because of more so of like what's going on around the league, right? With holdouts, hold-ins. No, AJ's not that kind of guy, right? Like he's there, he's active. Has there been any talk about his extension or like what's going on there?
Yeah, there was a question asked to I think it's Kyle Smith, who's the assistant general manager, before practice, and as you'd expect, he said he pretty much has no comment on AJ Terrell. He's not going to talk about AJ Terrell's contract. Pretty much giving us no indication about it so far. Terrell, to his credit, was asked about it as well a few days ago. He said that he's just going to sort of let his agent deal with that. He never planned on holding out. The Falcons did have everyone report right now. Terrell I think he is on his 5th-year option. I think he's making 13 million right now this season. But yeah, so far, as you'd expect, just PR answers and just silence. And I think that's fine. Like as the media, we sort of have that obligation to ask, but they sort of don't have the obligation to reveal anything to us. But right now, all we know is it's in the hands of his agent and the Falcons, and they're hammering it up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, that's kind of the vibe that I've gotten to about Terrell is that they're probably going to play it out this year, and we'll see what happens. So obviously he'll be trying to have a great season. like you always would. But sometimes the contract year, it can be motivating for guys. I don't really think it's a lack of motivation with Terrell or anything like that that's gonna create this great season, but maybe more of a, I think they're trying to see how he fits in this like sort of Fangio-ish style defense. And I know Joe Schmo is in the chat again. Welcome back, Joe. I know he's very much been on the place of like, in this sort of scheme, they're probably not likely to pay a cornerback one big money, because it's a pattern matching scheme and all this stuff. And Joe, you know way more about that than I do, so I can't really speak to it, but I know that's your take, and I wanted to shout you out because I know you've written many paragraphs in the comments about it, so I wanted to shout out your work there trying to explain it. And I think that at this point they have not extended him, so we're still very much in that situation where, will they extend him? Will they simply try to see if they can get that comp third round pick for him, because that seems likely that's what he's going to net, with what's likely to be a top end corner contract. But yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
I was just gonna say, like, if you do have that conversation about Terrell, it doesn't even have to be that comp third round pick. You can sort of do what the Chiefs did with L'Jarius Sneed as an option, where you sort of tag him and try to trade him for a second rounder. Now that's obviously a conversation now way far down the line, but it's a conversation that'll sort of get louder and louder the longer an extension isn't in place.
Yeah. So again, we'll see how long it lasts, if it does last all season, if he does go into the off. Like, I assume if they go into the offseason with him not being signed, then they're probably planning to let him walk. But, we'll see. Money is going to be tighter going forward because they're paying Kirk Cousins, right? So they don't necessarily have the huge surplus they would have had. And, we'll see this Sunday ticket lawsuit. I know some people have heard about it, but
run me my money.
Yep. Please send it right here. For all of us Sunday ticket enjoyers, good for the fans, but folks need to understand that actually could impact the NFL's revenue. It's that much money, and that could cause the cap to not go up. Or I don't think it'll cause the cap to shrink, but it might not go up. Like, I think people were sort of expecting it to start skyrocketing because that's what happened this year. It went up way more than expected. That lawsuit, if that ends up going through and having to be paid out quickly, like, that could impact the salary cap. So keep an eye on that, because that could throw a wrench into, especially the Saints, who are just praying every single season that the cap skyrockets to stay afloat. If the cap were to like stagnate, the Saints would be in huge trouble. Like, there's no doubt about it. I mean, a lot of teams would be in huge trouble, but that's just something to monitor, and we'll see how that ends up playing out, because that is sort of an underrated thing. But the secondary is interesting, because I was expecting obviously Clark Phillips to be more heavily involved. We'll see if he can sort of crack that rotation going forward.
Phillips, it's not that Phillips isn't getting looks and reps against the first team. Like, that's obviously what they've meant to do with the first team versus second teamers. So Clark Phillips has seen, a lot of coverage against Kirk Cousins and the first team, because that's how they're structuring it. And in walkthroughs as well, the way they do the walkthroughs is they rotate out the first and second team defenses with Kirk Cousins' first team offense. And then you have the third and fourth stringers rotating out with Michael Penix' second team offense. So, just because Clark Phillips hasn't sort of gotten those looks opposite of AJ Terrell, it doesn't mean that he's not sort of still seeing the high, the maximum capabilities of the Falcons offense in these practices. In fact, I'd say that he's seeing more of it than Mike Hughes is, because we've gotten more of the second team defense facing the first team offense in those 11-on-11s.
Yeah. No, I mean, I'm certainly, like, I think the way they're distributing practice snaps is actually pretty clever. Like, and I know a lot of people are asking, like, oh, well, why are they having the starters play against the second straight? It's because they're trying to, like, first of all, I think they're trying to help both sides sort of get their feet wet, like, a little bit before going into, like, absolute, one-on-one type stuff. This is sort of the intro part of practice, but I think you also want to see, like, your rookies, your young guys, your players that are going to be on your second string. You need to know how those guys are going to look against the first string guys, because that's who they're going to play on Sundays. Like, that's who they're going to play when they get on the field. So I think it's smart to kind of see that, especially in a situation where you have like Kirk Cousins is probably just going to destroy anyone he plays at this point in camp. It seems like so might as well have the second string play the first team defense because it's like and I know the defense is going through a scheme change, right? So it's going to take time for that to get implemented too. So it might be more of like we're just trying to see how different guys look and give people opportunities to impress against a higher level of competition. So yeah, it's an interesting approach. I don't think we really saw much of that under Arthur Smith, where we saw the lower level teams going against the higher level teams.
Almost never. Almost, it
Yeah,
was always
not frequently. Yeah,
this team, yeah.
yeah. Which that's the standard way of doing things, but I did find that kind of interesting that we've seen that so much over the past several days at least. But it's definitely produced some good highlights and some fun stuff on during Saturday's practice for sure. Let's see. I'm trying to see if there's anything else in your notes that I missed, but I don't know if there's anything else you wanted to touch on, Adnan.
Yeah, no, we talked. We already touched on the slot wide receiver. I want to say that the first team offensive line has looked pretty good. Because a lot of those sacks that I mentioned from the interior guys, a lot of the pressures that came against the second team offensive line. So, I mean, right now, so far, so good because I haven't really talked about the O line at all, which is a really good thing when it comes to the O line. There was a play where Chris Lindstrom had, a great block for Tyler Algier inside the red zone, and Algier scampered in for a touchdown. So, right now the offensive line, they look really good. But again, we can't really judge them until the pads come on, just yet. And the pads, I thought it was going to be Tuesday. Darnell Mooney today said that he guessed it'll be Wednesday. But the pads are definitely coming on at some point after tomorrow's rest day. The second team offensive line, by the way, just giving you the names: Ryan Newsel, the backup center. Backup guards are Kyle Hinton and Javon Gwynn. I think Hinton right now has the inside track to that swing guard job, and Hinton, I think, did a pretty good job last year when he was called upon. And then you have the backup tackles, who are Julian Davenport, who's the new signing right before camp started, and of course Storm Norton. Storm Norton got some looks with the first teamers today in the walkthrough as well. So today and on day one, he, you know, I'm not saying there's a right tackle competition between him and McGarry. McGarry's clearly the starter, but they are giving Storm Norton some looks with the first teamers here and there, just because there's always a possibility that he's going to be called in action at some point.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. Like, and I'm glad to see obviously Storm Norton do well. I think a guy that had some struggles early in his career, but last year came in for the Falcons for several games, looked great. Played solid football as a swing tackle, and that's tough to do, right? So glad to have a good swing tackle on the roster. You never know when you're gonna need that, and you hope that the guy you have is good desperately. But I know we also had a question from Joe about any UDFAs that have stood out so far. I know most of the time the far field is where the UDFAs have been, so it's been kind of hard to get eyes on. But
yeah, it's I haven't really seen, just because a lot of them haven't gotten much of an opportunity in those 11 on 11s. The only sort of opportunities for those like really young guys happened last night and very late, and it was for a very limited amount of plays. So I wanna give you a standout name among the UDFAs, Joe, but I don't think there is one yet, and that's just because of how this stuff has been structured, where it's been so 11 on 11 heavy that there hasn't really been much of an opportunity for any UDFAs to shine.
yeah, no, that makes sense. And Jordan, did you have any final questions for us before we wrap things up today?
Yeah, I guess like the last question I'd have is, just more so like running scheme in terms of, I know a lot of what we did last year was precedent around outside zone and stretch plays. And obviously y'all know my my frustration with that. And I know a lot of, at least what I've been reading is, it's been more inside zones, been more duo blocking schemes, things like that. So just like, with what you've seen, like what has been like the big difference in the run game in terms of blocking schemes or just run schemes in general?
I mean, I mentioned a little earlier with Kevin, just it's so hard to gauge anything about the run game until the pads come on.
Sure.
But Bijan Robinson did talk about on day one already. He was asked about any sort of schemes, and so was Raheem Morris, actually, just because I think it was so prevalent just how frequent outside zone was called last year that even people in the media are like, all right, like, we're probably not going to do that again this year, right, guys? And Raheem Morris did sort of mention, and Bijan Robinson echoed this later on in his interview with us. You obviously want to have your sort of bread and butter, which that will probably be that wide zone. But Raheem Morris did talk about how important those changeups are going to be of, mixing in some inside zone, mixing in some dives, mixing in, just sort of keeping the defense on their toes and just sort of keeping the defensive coordinator guessing. And I mean, Bijan also sort of agreed with Josh Kendall, the athletic reporter, that he ran more outside zone last year than he ever has in his life. Uh, but Bijan did also sort of
Sorry.
he did sort of echo Raheem Morris a little bit in saying that they're probably gonna throw in some different looks this year just to sort of not be predictable. And I know he isn't he's not intentionally throwing any shots at the coaching staff last year, but it's pretty clear to me that like everyone sort of realized just how much of a disadvantage the run game was put in last year, sort of calling the same play over and over again.
Yep. Yes, very very familiar refrain, Jordan, to many of our.
Nope, I ain't gonna say nothing. I'm not gonna say it.
Yep. We don't need to throw shade specifically. The shade is implied. So it's so yes, but yeah, that's what I was hearing too from Adnan and other folks, is that there's a lot more like man gap stuff being worked, and duo, and like that's gonna be a thing. Like I don't know if it's gonna be to the level of like the Rams were doing last year, where I think they actually ended up running like basically 50-50 like zone and man gap stuff. I don't know if it's going to be like that extreme, but it's definitely going to be more than like I know the Falcons ran inside at like the lowest rate of any team last year. It was like comically low. So it was like 14% or something like that. So I think the Rams were more like 30% like inside the guards, like 30% between guard and tackle, and then 30% out off tackle. And I think maybe, I don't know if the Falcons are going to be that balanced, but probably less,
sign me up for it.
Yeah, I sure hope so. Especially with how good the interior is. You got Drew Dahlman and Chris Lindstrom. I mean, come on.
Yeah, we are seeing, it's not very frequent, but there are some looks in the formation where you have both running backs in the backfield. There was one where I saw Bijan Robinson being motioned out to the right, and then like a handoff to Tyler Algier. No fullbacks. Fullbacks don't exist anymore in this offense.
R.I.P. fullbacks. Yep.
R.I.P. fullbacks. But there's a lot of motion going on too. Like Ray McLeod constantly in motion. I've seen Kyle Pitts in motion, Drake London, and I mean that comes from that Sean McVay type, philosophy of, we've seen it with the Rams where they always had Robert Woods and then later Puka Nacua always in motion, sort of giving the threat to the defense of, maybe it's not a handoff to the running back, maybe it's going to be an end around to the wide receiver this time. And that sort of always, gave the defense just a split second level of hesitancy, which, obviously a split second can be the difference between a tackle for a loss and a big play in the NFL. But yeah, there's a lot of motion, a lot of Ray McLeod in motion, especially.
Yeah. I'm excited.
Yeah.
I love the sound of that. I know you do too, Jordan.
I do, but I also I am sad about the departure of fullbacks. I mean, Pat DeMarco, Ovi Muhaley, and Bob Christian, they ain't walking through that door anytime soon. So it is what it is.
Yeah, we had a good run of fullbacks in Atlanta.
Yeah, we did,
and I think with Kyle Shanahan, it like sort of reached its peak of fullback usage. But I think Kyle Shanahan's going to carry the torch going forward. So
yeah, like Kyle Juszczyk is single-handedly carrying the fullbacks on his back with Kyle Shanahan at this point. And
Mhm.
yeah, I mean Patrick DeMarco in 2016, what a special season. I remember, I think 2015, I think I was with Blogging Dirty at this point, but I literally wrote an article just like pretty upset that DeMarco wasn't an All-Pro. They gave it to Mike Tolbert, who was a much worse blocker, but Mike Tolbert had like 10 touchdowns out last year because
He
they
was their Mike Allstott.
yeah, so they're like, oh, we're gonna like make him the Pro Bowler, and it's like, no, like DeMarco's so much better than him.
Yeah. No, I mean
But
it. Yeah.
yeah, we're talking about fullbacks. I think it's time to end the show.
That might
I
be
would say
our
the
our
end of
key.
that's the end of that season that we're going to
Yeah.
talk about.
Yeah, we're done. We're moving on. It's 2024 now. 2023 can't hurt us anymore. So, Jordan, always a pleasure. Thanks for stopping in, taking a break from your other duties at Stanford football. He's still at Big 75 fella, still friend of the show and occasional guest whenever he gets time. Jordan, we really appreciate you. Thank you so much for making the time. Anything you want to plug? Any Stanford plugs? Anything going on over there you want to let the people know about?
Not too much. I mean, we start training camp tomorrow, which is crazy. This will be technically my 6th training camp affiliated with Stanford, right? With the player and now on staff. So I'm just happy, excited to get going. It's going to be a new time, right, with us in the ACC. But I'm just excited to see what it leads to.
Yes, RIP the Pack. And hopefully there'll be
it's
some
not
good times.
dead. We
not
still
dead.
got 2 teams there. It's not
RIP
dead.
the Pac-12. The Pac, whatever the Pac is now. May it continue to flourish with those diehards there. But yeah, hopefully the ACC will treat you well too, with those guys.
Appreciate it.
Maybe Syracuse. I'm in Syracuse, so if you ever come up here, well, the Orange are playing. Hit me up. So
we play up there this year, actually.
Okay, well, hit me up if you're going to be up here. So
yeah, for sure.
But yeah, Adnan, our man on the field, our in-person correspondent this year. He's at Say Which Way, braving the rain today, getting totally drenched. It sounds like. So thank you for the on-hand reporting. Adnan, anything else you want to let the people know about before we wrap up today?
Yeah, I want to plug my recap and notes articles. Those go up every single day of practice. They will have literally everything that I see, throughout the day at training camp. I want to say that they're very comprehensive, but that's for you to decide, the readers. So far, day 4 just went up as we were beginning the show, like an hour ago. Day 3 went up this morning at 9 a.m. So if you haven't read those, check those out. And yeah, I mean, yeah, a lot of my information is going to have to come from those articles because I'm not allowed to, tweet as much as I would like to.
No more play-by-play. The play-by-play has been taken away from us in many ways. It sounds like.
I'm really salty about it, but I'm gonna.
Yep. Well, guys, thank you for joining us as well. I'm Kevin Knight at Falcoholic Kevin. Please like, subscribe, leave that 5-star review on your platform of choice. If you want to support the show, you can check us out on Patreon, patreon.com/Falcoholic or if you're more of a video enjoyer, you can join up here on YouTube in the channel memberships. We're going to be doing our Falcoholic Fantasy Football Leagues starting in August, so you can get involved with that, get involved with some other cool stuff as well. Thank you guys so much thanks to all of our patrons as well for your support, channel members as well. Thank you guys. We will be back. There is no practice on Monday, but I believe Tuesday will be the next practice, so we'll be getting back to it next week. So stay tuned for the next show announcement. But until then, guys, enjoy the rest of your weekend. Thank you so much for joining us on the Falcoholic Live. We will see you guys next time as we inch closer and closer to the preseason. We're getting there. The season's just a little over a month away now, so be here before you know it. Exciting times for this team and for all of us. Thanks again to everyone. Thanks again to Jordan and Adnan for coming on today. We will see you guys next time on the Falcoholic Live. Have a great day, folks.